Hey YouTube, this is Jaden coming at you with another video. I wanted to do a video based on kind of I guess a review of Set 5, Awakening of the Twin Blades. Set 5 was a very it was a very hyped set for obvious reasons. It brought so many different things to the game. It introduced cross rides to the game, and it brought on the next stage of Vanguard. It was a very important set for the game. So I just kind of wanted to talk about the three most important cards in the set, because and kind of do a little comparison video showing the strengths and weaknesses and kind of discussing each one of them at length. And the three cards that is first, for the Royal Paladins, Majesty Lord Blaster. For the Kagero clan, Dragonic Overlord the End. And for the Shadow Paladins, Phantom Blaster Overlord. Now, I'm going to kind of just briefly explain each, what makes these cards good, what's their strength, what their effects are, and kind of tell you a little bit about their weakness. So I'm just going to go ahead and get started, and we are going to start with Majesty. Now, Majesty Lord Blaster is from the Royal Paladin clan. Anybody who has ever used the Royal Paladin clan knows of kind of like the cornerstone of Royal Paladins, Blaster Blade. Well, this is all we had of Paladins, and then Set 4 rolled around in December of last year and gave us Shadow Paladins, and then we were introduced to Blaster Dark, the clan used by Renzo Zukamori and his family of shadowy evil paladins, and which Blaster Dark is, I guess you could say, the evil twin of Blaster Blade. Now, in the anime, the main character, Aichi Sendo, dealing with his psyqualia problems, is struggling whether or not he should use his psyqualia, because it makes the user of psyqualia very evil and inconsiderate, rude, or in common or in layman's terms, a grade A douchebag. So the idea for Majesty Lord Blaster came along when he wanted the strengths of both sides. He wanted to be able to use psyqualia to his advantage without letting him lose control of who he was. So, Suiko of Ultra Rare gave him Majesty Lord Blaster. And Majesty Lord Blaster represents the good and evil in everybody. Majesty Lord Blaster is just that, the middle. You know what I mean by that? It's the good and bad in all of us. So I'm going to read to you Majesty's effects real quick. If you have a card named Blaster Blade and a card named Blaster Dark in the Soul, so both of these, this unit gets plus 2,000 and plus 1 critical. And it's a continuous ability, so that means at all times. Then an auto effect. Choose a unit named Blaster Blade and Blaster Dark from your rear guard and put them into your soul. When this unit attacks, you may pay the cost. If you do, this unit receives plus 10,000 power until the end of turn. So, Blaster Blade and Blaster Dark is what makes Majesty function. Now, Majesty's strengths. Yeah, he'll be sitting at 12k at all times, and he is sitting at double critical at all times. But compared to the other two cross rides from the deck, I'm sorry, I consider Majesty a cross ride. I know he's technically not, but for argument's sake of the video, and to me, I consider him one. So, out of the other two cross rides, his weakness is he is 1,000 power weaker. And also, you can't just, like, for Dragonic Overlord the End and Phantom Blaster Overlord, you have to ride the original grade 3 and then ride the cross ride on top of it. Or at least you have to do that with Kagero. Shadow Paladins has a way around that, but we'll get there. Now, you can do that for Majesty, but in order to do that, you'd have to ride Blaster Blade, and then ride Blaster Dark, and then ride Majesty. But because of Majesty's second ability, when he attacks, they can enter his soul, that covers that weakness. So his weakness is that he is 1,000 power weaker at all times than the other two cross rides, but his strength is he's always sitting at 2 critical. So if your opponent is going to use their perfect guards really quickly, because if they don't and they say they guard for 2, if you hit a critical and a heal trigger, they're going to take 3 damage, and that's going to be very deadly. So that's that's Majesty for you. Okay. Now let's move on to Kagero. We all know Kagero because of Toshiki Kai, the anti-hero of Cardfight Vanguard, the character that we at times hate and the character at times we like. As the anime opens in season 1, which I'm going to do reviews for season 1 and 2 tonight eventually. If you're looking at it from you haven't read spoilers, you're not really sure if Kai is there to be Aichi's friend, is he there to give him guidance, is he there to help him out, or if he's just there to make Aichi's life hell and remind him that Aichi will never be on Kai's level. Dragonic Overlord is the card that Kai uses in the anime. Well, towards the end of season 1, I believe episode 56 it is, don't hold me to that, he goes back to fight his long-lost friend Renzu Tsukamori and claims he is going to save him from the grasp of Psyqualia, and the card that he says that he's going to use to do that is this, Dragonic Overlord the End. Dragonic Overlord the End's ability. As long as Dragonic Overlord is in the soul, the End gains 2,000 power at all times, and his overpowered ability, if his attack hits, you counterblast 2 and drop another copy of the End to restand him and keep the Twin Drive. Now, the weakness for him is, unlike Royal Paladin and Shadow Paladin, they do not have a card like Dream Painter or Nightmare Painter, which if you're not familiar with these cards, Dream Painter and Nightmare Painter, Dream Painter being for Royal Paladins and Nightmare Painter being for Shadow Paladins, when they're card to a rearguard slot, you may take a card from the respective clan that they represent and add it to your soul. So you can, for instance, call Dream Painter and add a Royal Paladin to your soul, and you can call Nightmare Painter to add a Shadow Paladin to your soul. Kagero does not have that luxury, so that's one of the weaknesses they have, so you cannot pull off the cross ride early if you want the End at his full power. But the End's strength is his ridiculous ability, and I'm pretty sure you'll see him in another segment video that I've created eventually, because the End is by far one of the most overpowered cards in the world of Vanguard. And finally, Shadow Paladins. Shadow Paladins was introduced to us when we see the protagonist from Season 1, or the bad guy from Season 1 of Cardfight Vanguard, and Renzu Tsukamori, and his evil Shadow Paladin deck that he wields with the power of Psyqualia. Now, at first when we see Shadow Paladins, we see Blaster Dark and are introduced to Shadow Paladins that way. Now, like I told you about the little backstory of the End, when Kai used him on Renzu Tsukamori to supposedly free him of Psyqualia, what Kai was not aware of was that Ren had gotten a lot stronger than he had, and also had a new creature to unleash upon Toshiki Kai's Dragonic Overlord the End, and that card was Phantom Blaster Overlord, the cross ride for the Shadow Paladin Dragon, Phantom Blaster Dragon. Now, Phantom Blaster Dragon, like the End, if the copy of his counterpart is in the soul, he'll gain 2,000 power at all times. His ability is you counterblast 3, drop a copy of the Overlord, and he gains plus 10,000 and plus 1 critical for that turn only when he attacks. Now, let's talk about the strengths of this. Now, the strength is, like I said, he has a card called Nightmare Painter, which allows you to where you could, for instance, ride this as your first grade 3, call Nightmare Painter to the rear guard, and then simply take Phantom Blaster Overlord and add him to the soul, saving yourself a step. so you wouldn't have to ride Phantom Blast or Dragon and then ride Overlord 2 turns to get the cross ride at full power. Now, his weakness. His cost is heavy. I do understand that. A lot of people believe that it should be only Counterblast 2 and drop a copy. But, in my opinion, I think the reason he is a Counterblast 3 is because you can cross-ride him early. And there's a lot of combos to ensure that you can do that. That is the reason why that it's done like that. Shadow Paladins as a whole, the strength of the deck comes from its ability to create powerful attacks quickly. It takes someone with very high strategic to play the Shadow Paladins like Renzu Zukamori, because it's a deck that you can't just pick up and immediately know how to play. You got to play test with a little bit, and Phantom Blast or Overlord is no exception. If you want to play Phantom Blast or Overlord, you have to learn how to play with him a little bit, because you have to kind of get the idea of when and when not to use his Persona Blast. You don't use his Persona Blast. Out of the 3 of them, well, Majesty didn't have a Persona Blast, but the End's Persona Blast you can use a little recklessly because it is a relatively cheap effect. But him, you got to be careful, because it is a Counterblast 3. And most players now are only playing 2 to 3 copies of the Damage Flipper Curse Lancer in their Shadow Paladin decks. So you got to be careful on how you use this effect. So anyway, this has been a video reviewing the 3 main clans that were received support in Awakening of the Twin Blades, the Kagura, Royal Paladin, and Shadow Paladin clans. I hope you enjoyed this video. This was a good idea I thought I had, because I thought a video should be made kind of explaining how important that set was to the game. It introduced a new step of Vanguard, and I hope you enjoyed this video. I hope that I gave good descriptions of the weaknesses and strengths of all 3 of said cards that I discussed. Please let me know what you thought of the video. Let me know if it was helpful. Thanks for watching. Rate, comment, subscribe, all that good stuff, and I'll see y'all later.